here's 5 easy to remember tips about getting tips on a gig. And I'm gonna frame this in the Nashville way because I live in Nashville. I play in a lot of Nashville honky tonks. And Nashville's a little bit unique, but also if you're playing someplace else in another city, another part of the world that takes tips, this is easily applicable. This is also really applicable if you are busking. So without further delay, my first tip is frequency, meaning remind your audience. And I say you want to remind them at least 3 separate times. Why? Because usually it takes somebody 3 times of hearing something, seeing something, for it to really sink in. And this is also really a great tip to keep in mind as a musician. You need to get out there, have people see your face. People need to see your face 3 times for you to get gigs. But we're not talking about getting gigs, we're talking about getting tips today. So, what are some easy ways to frequently remind people? Obviously, you can say this over the microphone. And some of us may be uncomfortable with asking for tips over the mic. And I would say that's probably something you want to get over fairly quickly. But you don't have to bludgeon somebody with that. You can politely say, hey, I'm working here for tips today, and I really appreciate any support you give. But you don't have to be frequent with saying it over and over again. You can also have people have a tip jug at the front of the stage. Now, maybe not something this small, but have a big bucket that says tips on it. That's a visual reminder. And if they can see that visual reminder, it's kind of always in the front of their minds, right? I've seen people also use visual reminders with having, kind of an expandable, kind of like a poster that's easily, you can get them printed on a fabric, they're transportable, and on that fabric you would have some information about the artist and a QR code, like a Venmo code or a Cash App for tipping. So that's another way. And lastly, you could just have somebody walk around with that bucket. So if you're in a band, maybe the singer takes a song off, maybe somebody else in that band sings a song, and they just walk around with that tip bucket, say, would you like to support the band? Or thank you for coming out, we really appreciate your support. So those are 3 separate ways, and I say that you really need to remind somebody 3 separate ways and 3 separate times for it to sink in. So for every, let's say an audience member is going to be there for about 30 to 45 minutes of your set, think about trying to find 3 ways to remind them gently during that time frame. So my second tip is set the expectation. And what I mean by setting an expectation is here in Nashville, we'll frequently have somebody come up and request a song. They'll request, okay, I want to hear Wagon Wheel. And how we approach that, everybody approaches it differently, but here's one way I would approach it with setting an expectation. You can say, oh, well, we just had somebody come up here, and you can get on the mic and say this. We just had this lovely young gentleman or lovely young woman, lovely young person come up and request this song. And ladies and gentlemen, what we do here is we are like a living, breathing human jukebox. So just like if you go into any establishment, that jukebox is going to be playing. But if you want to hear a specific song, drop a little money in that jukebox, or in our case, put a little bit of love in our jug, and we will gladly do that song for you. If you want to hear that song right away, you want to get bumped to the top of the order, pull a little bit more money into that jug, and we'll play it for you right away. And this is a really graceful way of saying, we're not going to play that song unless you give us money. But you're just reminding people, this is what we do, this is our job. And if people understand that right away, they'll be like, oh, okay. They will gladly give you money instead of feeling offended when you say, oh, I can play that song, but you need to give me $20. So if you set those expectations early on, I think your chances of success for getting more tips are going to be far greater. Now, in terms of setting expectation, it brings me to my third point, which is make it interactive. Have fun with the audience. And here's what I mean by that. in Nashville or any country place, and if you have a fiddle in the band, there's always going to be somebody that comes up and wants to hear The Devil Went Down to Georgia by Charlie Daniels Band. And for lack of better terms, here in Nashville, I generally hear people say, oh, that's a $100 song. And that's kind of the social contract that most musicians here stick to. Now, here's how you can make it fun. You can say, ladies and gentlemen, we just had somebody ask for a classic song, Devil Went Down to Georgia. And we can play that song, but our fiddle player over here, it really takes the wind out of their sails. They really give it their all. And so in order to do that, there's a thing down here in Nashville on Broadway. It's a $100 song. Now that $100 doesn't need to come all from one person, but it can come from a collective group of the audience. And I see about, 100 people. So if everybody here came up and gave $1, or if just 5 people came up and gave $20, we can play that song right away. What do you guys think? Do you think they can do it? And you have the guys in the band say, I don't know. And you make it kind of like an interactive, a fun thing. And before you know it, people are like running up and they're throwing their money in there, right? Because you're engaging them. You're making them part of the show, and it's fun. And I've had a lot of success doing that. Likewise, you can make it even more interactive by saying, oh, we started the song off fast. What do you guys think of the audience? People will clap, and you say, well, for every $10 you drop in that bucket right now, we'll play it a few BPMs faster. And I don't know, last night we almost broke down because people threw so much money in, we had to play blistering fast. And it makes it kind of interesting, interactive for people. So challenging people in some way, or saying, this is our last song of the night. We're going to auction it off. What do you want to hear? Highest bid gets their song played. So if you're making this interactive, the chances of our getting kind of crowd-funded is much, much better. And speaking of crowd, it's going to bring me up to my 4th point, which is, and this is a huge one, and I think a lot of people miss it, is curate your audience. And what I mean by curating your audience is this, is if you played every single song that everybody wanted to hear, you would lose your audience pretty quickly. And what's the saying? If you try to make everybody happy all the time, nobody's going to be happy. I like to think of it in a way that, okay, you need to kind of curate the audience. What are you presenting to people? Are you going to be a country band? Are you going to be a classic country band, a western swing band? Are you going to be pop rock bands? And all those are fine, but really saying this is the style of music that we play. And it took me a while to understand this because I was playing in kind of a western classic country swing bands. And sometimes people would come up and they would request a song and be like, all right, cool, guys, we can do that. And the band leader would be like, I'm sorry, we don't play that type of music, but do you have something in this style we can play? And we wouldn't always have a big audience. We would actually have sometimes a smallish audience. And I would think about man, all these honky tonks I would go by at at 10 o'clock at night, 11, 12, and it's just packed and people are singing along. I'm like, those guys must be making bank. We're going to make shit in tips. And I would get I wouldn't get necessarily pissed, but I would be worried. But at the end of the set, we'd be I'd make a great amount of money in tips. And this band leader, he told me, he's like, well, I'm just kind of if you play All the Small Things by Blink-182 every time someone comes up and asks for it, even if they're offering you $20, you're going to lose, the audience that you're trying to appeal to. And this band leader was telling me that they're trying to appeal to maybe an older, more sophisticated audience that may not have quite the mass, but this is the audience that also is more willing to spend on a band. And I never thought about it that way. And I was like, oh, okay. And we would, on those gigs that we're maybe on the second or third floor of a honky-tonk and need to get as much traffic, maybe from 2 to 6, not as many people out, we would make more money than some of these bands doing like the closing shift, the 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift. And I'm not saying that is the way, but thinking about finding a way to curate your audience is a really effective way at kind of thinking, okay, what am I targeting? What am I going to do? How am I going to use that to make money? And we've even found ways around doing that, like as maybe like more of a classic old-timey country band, that if somebody requests a modern song, we're going to play that song. We can play that song and all the changes and the key, but we're going to play it in a style that is more of an era from like the 40s or 50s or 60s. And kind of playfully letting people know that's what you do also helps set that expectation. But really curating that audience is huge, and I think it's a big opportunity that a lot of musicians in Nashville miss. And my 5th tip is about authenticity. Think about authentically connecting with your audience. Really, connection is huge. Where are you guys from? What are you out here for? You know, Nashville has a lot of tourists. What brought you out tonight? How long have you been married? Oh, these people have been married for 25 years. Let's give them a round of applause. You know what? We're going to play a song just for you guys to dance to. You know, not asking for a tip, but just really recognizing someone and making the gig about them. Or talking about where are you from? What do you like? And if you can find some common ground, some way to connect with the audience, I think that's really, really effective at them wanting to stick around, wanting to feel like they have some investment in you and more willing to invest money with you. And with that same authenticity, you can authentically say, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being out here. Nashville is the greatest music city in the world. And one of the things that makes it great is you, our audience, and your willingness to support the arts here, support the musicians. We couldn't do this without you. We make our living down here playing for tips, and we appreciate any support you can give to us. And everything I said, that's the absolute truth. And that's what I authentically believe. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be like, you know what? I'm playing music full-time for a living and doing nothing else, and I'm comfortable doing that. And anytime someone drops like a $20 bill in that bucket, I am honestly grateful for it, because $20 is a lot of money. I mean, to me at least. And if someone's willing to say, oh, you know, I didn't have to, but I think, you know, I want to support you. You're doing a great job as a musician. That means a lot to me. And I also play music to make people happy. And if I can talk with somebody saying, what brings you here? What do you like to hear? What would make you happy? If I can play a song that brings a smile to their face, I mean, that is my honest to God intention, and I'm being authentic there. And if I can create some kind of authentic connection, man, they're more likely to follow you on social media. They're more likely to come to your next gig. They're more likely to recommend you to their friends when they're visiting. They're more likely they're from another city, they're going to tell their friends to come see you when they visit Nashville. It's really, I think connection is huge. And not looking at playing a gig as in punching in, punching out, and not looking as I just want to get money, but thinking, okay, what can I get from this gig? Yes, I want to get money, but if I can connect with people in some way, that's in my financial interest, that's also in my personal and my career interests. And again, that's something I think some people can lose sight of when they are playing so frequently, and they might get a little bit of burnout. So, added bonus tip is not saying yes to every gig and taking some time off to recharge your batteries. Yeah, you might miss out on a $200 gig, but that time you spent recharging you might, instead of $200 on your next gig, you might make $300 or $400. All things to keep in mind. And everything I've said today by no means is a golden rule. By no means is this is everything you need to do. And you might disagree with some of what I say. That's absolutely fine. I'm just some dude on the internet who plays drums in Nashville. I'm just sharing my experiences here. One thing I've learned is that there is no quick, easy solution. There is, oh, I'm just going to use this trick to get money. Maybe it works once or twice, but if you think about just like really consistently developing habits and keeping some things in mind and approaching every gig like it's the most important gig in the world and you're happy to do it, I think good things happen. So if you've appreciated what I've said here, if you found it useful, like, follow, subscribe, maybe send me a suggestion for a tagline, a sign-off line. Yeah, but again, thanks for watching. Give me a week or two, I'll have a sign-off line here.